Oh, what a Saturday we have on CBS, beginning with Ohio State at Rutgers in the Big Ten. Then #1 Georgia hosts a one-loss Missouri team, 3:30 Eastern. And the nightcap, #13 LSU at #8 Alabama, 7:45 CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus. Let's get picks for all three with Danny Kanell and Brady Quinn beginning at noon Eastern time, with the Buckeyes taking on a Rutgers team that's already won more games this season than they have in 9 years.
Yeah, give Greg Schiano a lot of credit, all the players, everyone else. I mean, they've stepped up defensively. I think they've got some playmakers, too, running the football. It'll provide a little bit of balance there. And Gavin Wimsatt is going to be tough to stop, especially for any defense, but let alone Ohio State's that's not seen too many dynamic running quarterbacks so far this year. All that being said, though, this is just a different Ohio State team, in my opinion. I know people have got their concerns maybe about Kyle McCord and the offense's ability to be what they're capable of. I think you saw a glimpse of that last week, though, with Travion Henderson out of the backfield, that explosion. Marvin Harrison, who probably should win the Heisman this year. It's just, to me, going to be too much. I would be concerned if they had something to worry about the following week. But I don't think anyone in the rest of their schedule besides Michigan is a problem for Ohio State. So I'm going to lay the 18.5 points. I know it's a big number. This time of year, weather's always a concern, too, in that portion of the country. But I think Ohio State puts up a big number here.
So you're telling me they're going to go to the birthplace of college football, Piscataway, and go win by almost 3 touchdowns?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen them with that run that we've seen some of these other teams, like Michigan has just been blowing out opponents. Georgia a couple times. We saw it last week against Florida, where they just handle their business and they go out there and look the part. For whatever reason, Kyle McCord has struggled with consistency. The 2 picks last week. I mean, there were a number of games. Almost every game he's had these blips where it's up, it's down, and then when he puts it all together, it's like, why can't we get that all the time? Until I see Ohio State put it together from start to finish, I'm going to go ahead and trust that Rutgers, this is their Super Bowl. They're having a tremendous season. They're playing with a lot of confidence. I'm going to say they can keep it inside that number, which is also why I like the under, because I do think Ohio State's defense is playing great. I think they'll be able to slow down Rutgers, but I also think Rutgers could slow down Ohio State. So I'll say in a lower scoring game, Ohio State wins, but 18.5 is too many for me.
They're giving up only 10 points a game so far right now, Ohio State's defense. They've been phenomenal.
And after this, for the Buckeyes, Michigan State, then Minnesota, then the game at Michigan. 3:30 Eastern time on CBS, a top 15 battle in the SEC, and this basically probably going to decide the division in the SEC East. Missouri, if they pull off the upset, they've got the inside path to the championship. But these are the 2-time defending champion Georgia Bulldogs, and we saw they are still pretty good without Brock Bowers.
Yeah, they kind of flexed on everyone last week. I mean, that's how I'd look at it. Although this matchup gave Georgia issues last year in Columbia. Different story now. And look, I know they've got plenty of weapons. Brady Cook's been highly productive. We know about Luther Burden, too, at the wide receiver spot. Schrader's been provided balance in the running attack. They're in the top half of the league defensively. So they're a complete team. This is probably Georgia's best challenge before they face LSU, Bama, whoever you're talking about from the SEC West and the SEC championship game. That being said, though, I think Georgia's got something to prove here. And at home, they're so good. So I'm going to lay the 15.5 points here. I don't think this game's overly competitive.
So I've noticed a trend, and I think it's going to continue throughout this back into the season, because coming into the season, it was their schedule's cakewalk, right? It's an easy schedule. But then all of a sudden you're hearing from the SEC, well, look at how tough challenges they have. Look at all these top 25 teams. Kentucky was a top 25 team. And it was like, oh, that's a tough out for Georgia. They can keep it close. Florida, it's a rivalry game. Remember, they can keep it close. Well, they dropped 50 on Kentucky. They blew out Florida. Probably could have called their number. I think you're going to see the same. I think, like you said, I think they can flex, especially between the hedges. They come back home. And you mentioned it's interesting, because I think this Heisman race is wide open. Maybe it's wide open this late. You know, we'll be in November, that it's as open as it gets. I think Carson Beck is somebody. And I think without Brock Bowers, we're actually getting a look at just how good he's been, making great decisions with the football, spreading it around. Their offensive line hasn't been great. Their run game hasn't been spectacular. And he's been able to shoulder more of the load. If that continues, he could be the winner in a last man standing. Last point, I think last year's close call is actually the worst thing that happened to Missouri, because Georgia's going to be dialed in. They're not going to overlook them.
Probably preaching that the whole time now.
Yeah, that game was a game that they probably should have lost. Missouri let it slip away. Again, that's at 3:30 Eastern time. Nestler and Danielson and Dell going to be at the SEC West game of the week, which is LSU at Alabama. And kind of like last year with that Georgia-Missouri game, Alabama has this one circled after LSU beat them a season ago.
Yeah, but I think LSU has this one circled too every single year. I mean, that was a huge moment for Brian Kelly in his first year at LSU, and for Jaden Daniels. Would he become the first quarterback to beat Alabama, Nick Saban coach team in back-to-back years. I can't think of another one off the top of my head. He's having a Heisman Trophy season. You look at his numbers that he's putting up right now, and I know there's a chance their team might not have that sort of success, but Jayden Daniels will be in New York when it's all said and done. Now, that being said, this is going to be a big-time challenge. Look, Alabama can get after opposing quarterbacks. I think they're going to limit a lot of the big plays that we've seen from this LSU offense so far. And the one problem is Alabama's biggest weakness is they can't protect Jalen Miller. They've given up the most sacks of any team in the SEC this year, but LSU can't really rush the passer either. So it's a bit concerning. I think this will be a tight game, a lower-scoring game. I'm going to take the points, though, in LSU in this case, and I also like the under.
So I'm with you on LSU. I think their defense has been getting ripped apart to shreds, right? They haven't been great. But the teams that have been tearing apart, Ole Miss, Missouri, Florida State, they got better weapons and better quarterback play than what you've seen out of Alabama.
I'm not going to say that yet.
All right,
because that's going to be one of those games where you start to see them flex.
But I also think as well, Alabama's defense has been great, but I don't think they've seen, outside of Quinn Ewers, who beat them, I don't know if they've seen a quarterback since him that has been able to exploit some of their weaknesses. And I agree with you. It's funny, kind of have a Heisman theme. It is that point in the season when you're having these marquee games. I totally agree with it. I think Jayden Daniels could win it if he's able to knock them off in Tuscaloosa. It's a big if, but I absolutely think this game comes down to a field goal late. And it's crazy to think, just a few years ago, there were back-to-back years, 28-point spread in this game. And now Brian Kelly's got them all the way back where they won last year looking for potential back-to-back. It's great because it's one of the best rivalries in the sport. And I'm going to go ahead and take LSU.
You'd have to say this is Jayden Daniels' Heisman moment or opportunity, right?
Yeah,
if he's ever gonna, this is the moment now.
Great triple header on CBS this upcoming weekend. There's also a couple more ranked-on-ranked matchups. One of them is big. It's out west. Washington, the lone remaining unbeaten in the Pac-12. We saw what happened in the Big 12 last week. Oklahoma went out. Maybe the Big 12's eliminated. This is a huge one for Washington, and they're not laying many points here against Caleb Williams and company.
No, they're not. And it's been part because I think, look, both these teams are going to run up and down the field and score. You know, this Washington defense, even though they can match up a bit on the outside, they can't really rush the opposing quarterback, and that's been the biggest Achilles heel for USC this season is their offensive line struggled to protect Caleb Williams. He's been under duress constantly all season, and it seems like Lincoln Riley's okay with not really wanting to stick with the running game. So this, to me, is going to be a shootout. The number for over-under, though, is ridiculously high. So I'm going to take the under just for that reason alone. That being said, though, I just think Washington's a more complete team when it's all said and done. And so I'll go ahead and lay the points here with Washington. But I still think Caleb Williams is going to have a big night, big number. He has to for them to be competitive in this.
Yeah, I agree with you. Principle alone, you see 76.5, and you just have to take the under if you're going to take it. To be honest with you, I don't love any of the bets in this game. I took USC just figuring, like we saw last week, a 2-point game, like we've seen with some of their other games, absolute shootouts till the end, one-possession games. And Caleb Williams has bounced back fast. I'm curious to see, too, Washington's defense needs to step up, or else they are going to get beat by Oregon in a potential rematch we could see in the Pac-12 championship game. And to ask them to get right against Caleb Williams and the weapons that he's working with, I think is a little bit too much to ask. So I'll take USC in those points.
Yeah, Washington's been shaky ever since they knocked off Oregon a few weeks ago. Best bets now. Brady, what do you like the most this week?
Well, I have to, a little shout out to my man Pete Prisca. I've got to throw in the Arizona State game just to make sure he's watching. I'm not going to pick against Arizona State in this case, although I don't think they're in a good spot here, even though they've been playing better. I like the over of Arizona State, Utah, over that 41.5. You're seeing a little more scoring now from Arizona State. They're running the football well. Scattaboo and Brooks in the backfield have been a nice combination for them. And then for Utah, offensively, tough challenge last week, taking on a really, really good Oregon team. I think Bryson Barnes and that group bounces back, so a little higher scoring than what it looks here, sitting at 41.5. Take the over.
All right, Danny.
I like it. I like the way you're thinking. I'm going to go to Bedlam, one of the best rivalries in the sport. Midseason, we get a glimpse. I don't know if you saw Mike Gundy's comments. He said him and Boz were spitting on each other, and Boz responded and said, hey, we can meet at the 50 if you want to. I love the back and forth. It's chippy. He was saying it's not as contentious now, which I guess is more a sign of the times of today's player. They're too friendly. But these teams are going to go at it, and I'm going to go ahead and take the Cowboys. At home, Ollie Gordon has been absolutely lighting up those numbers in the run game. Back-to-back 250-plus yard games. First time we've seen that since 2020. Alan Bowman, once they've stuck with the quarterback, they've actually gained some continuity on offense. And Oklahoma comes limping into this game. It wasn't only Kansas where they lost the game outright. Before that, like since the Texas game, struggled against UCF where you get a pass because, hey, the emotions of that that game. But they looked a little bit shell-shocked early in that game against Kansas. I think rivalry game, this is going to come down to a field goal. So give me Oklahoma State home dog by 6.5 points. I'll take those all day long.
All right, Danny Kanell and Brady Quinn picking a bunch of games against the spread, top 25 matchups, and it is a huge day in the Big 12. Not just Bedlam, but you also have Kansas State at Texas, another top 25 matchup. A bunch of teams tied for first in that Big 12 with potentially playoff hopes going by the wayside now with no more unbeaten teams. Cover 3 podcast. Everything college football all year long. Scan that QR code. It'll take you right there. Download and follow.